And this is why most people get intimidated. You're comparing yourself to whoever's the greatest content creator that you've ever enjoyed. And then all of a sudden we get in this like gap, of like, oh, we're not there, and saying, well, if it's not that, it's nothing. But progress over perfection, done is better than perfect. Where can you start? Small snippets, little pieces, frequently asked questions, the things that once they start learning that they will want to ask. And what you find is, what are their habits and what do they like? There's a lot of different ways to do this. But what are the ways that are going to work best for you? That's the question. And, so you get to say, I don't want it to be salesy. Great. It doesn't have to be. I don't want it to be this. Great. Go ahead and list what you don't want it to be. That's just as valuable as you listing what you want it to be. And make that list, because this gets to be an extension of who you are, not anyone else. Just think about how you want to communicate. Like, I love when a client interviews me. They just do so much of the talking for me. I'm answering the questions. That is awfully nice. I like to have one other person that I can do videos with that we can just play off of each other. We're letting people eavesdrop in on a conversation. When I'm the interviewer and then someone else's, it's their expertise, I hate that. I like talking. I like being able, so you've just got to figure out what your format's going to be. And you already know there's certain questions you're answering all the time, over and over. Those could be handled through short videos. Those could be handled through autoresponder emails. Those could be handled by a consumer awareness guide or a white paper. Those could be handled by a short book. Those could be handled by a number of things. You just have to figure it out. And one of the best ways to figure it out, I would get Joey Coleman's book, Never Lose a Customer Again, because it talks about the client journey. And if you're going to double your income in the next 3 years, what it's going to be is, how can you spend half the time and be twice effective with your customers so that you're spending time in the moments that matter most to you and them? Not in the time where you're being redundant, not in the time where you have to answer that same thing over and over, but in the time where they're really sharing and opening up to you because you're a trusted person in their life and you get to have a unique experience each person you talk with. So you're going to build more authority and expertise when you have an IP DNA you've figured out and a way to educate and support while you're asleep. Like, this is the way I look at content. When you get my books, it's my best foot forward. Money Unmasked right now is my best writing. It looks good. It's designed well. I would hand it to any person I met and be like, this is me, and it's the best that I am. Now, what if someone saw me? Like, I had my buddy, I landed once on the middle of the comedy tour. My buddy Michael Michalowicz, he wrote Profit First. He was behind me, tapped me on the shoulder, and I just looked at him, and I was like he thought I'd be excited. He thought I might give him a hug. It was like midnight. It felt like 3 a.m. He saw the worst version of me. Fortunately, he's seen the best version of me in my books, right? But in that moment, I didn't have the energy. So when you capture your best moments on camera, on audio, or in writing, you have a way for people to learn about you when they're not around in the best way that you're doing it. And the best news is, if it's not what you like now, you can evolve and redo it. You can improve it. Wealth Factory has a bunch of my old content that I'm going to redo based upon what I've learned over the last 10 years, and even from the sound and the aesthetic and the whole experience that I want to do versus, the old camera angles and the, fumbling through because I'm more articulate now. I did a presentation today for 44 minutes. My partner said it might have been the most clear and articulate I've ever been because I'm putting in the reps, which means that could replace other videos. So this is done is better than perfect, but the key is, what is your flow? What is the things that, of these things you love to do with connecting and improving and helping and how, and implementing, what can be done in a one-to-many format that's consistent with the same things that make you so special one-on-one? And again, I'm going to repeat it because it's worth repeating. So you get to be twice as effective in half the time. So you're doing the things that you don't get bored with or that you feel redundant about. And that's your IP DNA. Where do you get your ideas? How do you articulate the ideas? What are the best ways for your customers to receive the ideas that will then have you perceived as an expert and authority in a way that's consistent with how you want to create? Whether that's on your own, whether that's with someone else, whether that's, interviews, whether that's presentations, whether that's writing outlines, whether that's doing books. There's so many different ways to have it happen. It's just a matter of which ones are going to speak to you. And then worry about compliance second. If we have money, time, ability, or compliance at the forefront of our mind, we never are creative because we're always with this cloud and this heaviness. I want you to get a place where there's a void. Where do you just feel like there's a blank piece of paper that you get to create however you want, regardless of look, I've heard interviews with Joe Rogan where he's like, hey, I didn't think this was going to be this big. I just enjoyed doing it. And he's done it consistently for the longest time and has improved his skill set to become the best in the world. But the first episodes, I talked to Jordan Harbinger, right? He has a huge podcast. He's like, I used to just do it. I didn't know anyone was listening. He says, but over time, I started learning how to say less ums and ahs and have better spacing because it was something that he loved to do. It's part of his IP DNA. He talked me out of doing a podcast, and I'm kind of glad he did because I don't know if it would have been the one that I wanted to do. It would have been the one that everybody else wanted me to do. So this is the conversation at hand of how you to do what you do best and do more of it, and then do less of these things that you don't like doing or that you get bored with or that feels redundant. And that's the game. A little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. So it's not taking more of your time. It's just reallocating it, just like people rebalance a portfolio or have an asset allocation. You're going to have your asset allocation of you as the asset. How much time is one-to-one? How much time is one-to-many? And how much can those two things go hand in glove, hand in hand, so that you're better because of them working in synergy? I don't know that I've really talked about time allocation as an asset allocation, but there's even times of day that are better asset allocation of time. I write better in the morning. Like if I had to write right after this meeting, I don't know how I would do it. That I'm usually a little bit more, I can have tons of energy meeting with someone at this time of day, but less energy when I'm typing. I have more energy in the mornings for those types of things. I got too drunk in Vegas on Saturday, and when I was flying on Friday night, when I flew Saturday, I couldn't write a thing because I was tired. And you know, that's I think how a lot of people feel when they're doing things they don't want to do. They feel hungover because it feels like it's forced and it's frustrating and it's effort. The other thing is if you could suspend any concern about how it would be received. You might have a little imposter syndrome with the new format, but all you have to do is refine it and remember the mantra: done is better than perfect, progress over perfection. Done is better than perfect, progress over perfection. What I figured out, Dan Sullivan taught me I'm an 80%er. I want to get it 80% of the way done, then I want to hand it off for the other 20%. If I have to get it 100%, it takes so much more time and energy for that last 20%. So that's where you can get into co-creation and collaboration. That's why we have editors. That's why we have, you know, a number of people that can support, you know, team members. But like whether it's video editing, whether it's writing editing, whether, you know, like you can have things be improved by the editor so that you just do your best, and then they can cut out the parts that didn't work out or that you stumbled or made a mistake. It's not a big deal because you can just start creating. Candidly, it came from a couple places when I got started. Number one, my ego. I wanted to be more important than I was, and I knew that if I had written something that was cool and that would be perceived as cool. So I started with just a consumer awareness guide being like, what are some things I know other people don't? 5 ways to improve your finances when the economy's tough. I wrote, what are the 5 things nobody else was talking about? 7 ways to recover cash. These were the precursors, you know, that helped me out. So I didn't have to have a full book. It was just a Word document, and then I could improve those. Now, eventually we designed them, put into PDFs, but that was a start. But it really was, I wanted to be cool. And then it was, well, look, I could actually impact people more if they could read something before we talked or read something after we talked, so that they were more likely to do business and they're more likely to understand what they're doing. Because I have this really deep belief, if I could empower someone and they didn't need me, that was the best case scenario because they would tell other people about it, and there was plenty of people that needed to be helped. But I grew up learning, well, in finance, you want to make them reliant on you. I'm like, well, then you have no freedom because they're calling you about everything and they feel trapped and they're blaming you for everything, but you get no credit for anything. So I wanted to build them up as their greatest asset. So I started thinking about the tools that would kind of help me get there. But again, I wanted to be cool. I thought it was cool to have a book. I thought I'd be more important. My ego fed into that. And when I was all ego, it took forever to get it done. It wasn't really until my business partner died and I really spent some time at home with my family and asked, what do I really want? And I want to be able to have a life that has depth and harmony, meaning I'm intentionally living and I'm creating a life that isn't necessarily balanced, but it's got depth. So when I'm sitting down with my family, I'm with my family, not my thoughts wandering to my business. Or if I'm with my business, I'm not wandering my thoughts with my family and always feeling guilt and shame and going back and forth and never quite being powerful. And the second thing is, so that's the depth side, but the harmony side is living with intention, saying, how do I want to design my life? And what I knew is I got excited about sharing these concepts in the book because the book became part of who I was, like an artistic expression. And it became something that I fell in love with, that process and the challenges and the learning and getting excited about holding it in my hands and seeing people that had read it and the relationships that it built. So instead of looking at a book as like a business card that people are like, oh, look at this is something Garrett wrote, whoever thought he would write a book and prove something to myself, it became something where I was like digging in and learning more and asking new questions and having this whole purpose to my day of being like, man, this is fun. Like coming up with a title, super excited, wanting to call people, write certain chapters or come up with the title chapters and be like, oh my God, this is awesome. What are all the different ideas and thoughts? And then hiring researchers. And so what happened is it allowed me to grow as a human being. And the book was an extension of that growth, where if that book didn't exist, it wouldn't have pulled that content out of me because I just would have been in the rut of doing what I always did that got the results that I already got. And what happened with that book is I started meeting really fascinating, amazing people that changed my quality of life, that I had new conversations with, that challenged some of the things that I said in the book, that created healthy debate, that helped them flip a switch and have a different mindset that they were forever grateful for, and inviting me along into the adventures they had in this life. And before a book, I didn't quite have that. I was very regional and local, and I had like clients that liked what I did, but it became very robotic for me with clients before the book. And what the book did was, if someone read that, we could go deeper faster, and we could explore the ideas that they didn't quite understand because they came informed with better questions. See, because there's questions you're always being asked, but there's a lot of questions people don't even know how to ask or what to ask till they get deep enough in. And the way that the business is designed is by the time that happens, we're already onto another transaction because we're rewarded so much for new transactions that it's hard to continue to serve the people who've already transacted. You're at the richest part of the relationship, and now you're moving on. Where if you have this content, you continually to inform them in a way that they become a more valuable asset in the relationship for their finances and to you, because now they know what to ask. Now they know how to show up. Have you ever met with someone that doesn't even know what to ask and they're so lost that they have a hard time talking? Right? You're helping overcome that because they didn't want to do things wrong. They don't want to feel guilty for what they've done. There's all this, we have someone that always said people would much rather talk about sex than money. And, we're here talking about money, and they always feel like it should be bigger and they should have more, and they are embarrassed of their mistakes. And you know what? When I led with vulnerability in my books and talked about my mistakes and the mishaps, it was like, oh, wait, he's human too. And then that gave them permission to open up. I just heard this guy, Will, who wrote Unreasonable Hospitality. And he talked about how that not everybody likes the tasting menu in every piece of food, but they would never ask for anything different because it's the #1 rated restaurant in the world. And he said, let's always have extra food and we can customize the tasting menu. Just ask people if there's anything they don't like. And nobody said there was anything they didn't like because they're just so happy to be at the restaurant. So Will one day walks up to a table and goes, I don't like shellfish and I definitely don't like oysters. And he goes, is there anything that you guys don't like, especially anything on this tasting menu? And they named a few things, and then they customized the meal, made it more special experience. See, he led with, here's what I don't like, but if he didn't lead with that, they didn't have permission because they're trying to pretend to be perfect. And the pressure of trying to do that one-on-one in a short period of time is heavy, where if they're reading a book at their own time or watching a video at their own time, it allows you to condense and get to the more special part of the one-on-one meeting. Killing Sacred Cows was that book, but I'm here to tell you, I think Money Unmasked will be much more magical because it's more heartfelt and it deals directly with them in their money personas, which you as an advisor knowing the money personas shows you where their pitfalls and what helps them with prosperity the most. So you know how to talk and speak a language that will be more consistent with who they are. And for them, they, like in this book, there's a lot of like what I would call damaging admissions. Like I'm talking about mistakes, I'm talking about vulnerabilities, I'm talking about difficult times, because everybody has that at some point with money, whether they feel inadequate around it or whether they feel like they want it too much or they feel guilty for having. There's all this kind of stuff that's out there that I have a friend, Michael. He always talks about there's what people can share with you, there's what people will share with you, and there's what people can't even share with you because they don't even know how to say it, right? It's like buried in the basement. And if you can lead with vulnerability, people can start sharing things with you that they would have never had the courage to share before. And I had consultants early on in my career, they're like, you want to act like you've never made a mistake and you want to inspire so much confidence in them because you got it all figured out. And I'm like, so inspire confidence in them through falsehood, through, and by the way, part of what made me a really good advisor was my mistakes and being over leveraged in real estate and not fully understanding the value of cash value and taking that out when it would have been fine just staying where it was. And so those stories become the common ground, because I feel like a lot of people that are willing to share their scars are bonded forever. People that only share their successes fabricate their life, and none of it's really true, and it limits your chance of growing and getting further along. Well, imagine if they share something with you they've never shared with anyone before. They shared a part of themselves because they trusted you enough, and your job is to see and hear them, and they can see and hear you if you're creating content for them when you're not around. And that gives you more time to listen and ask questions and less time explaining. My process is I always start with outlines. So like I could pull an outline up right here. Let's see here. Is this an outline? Yeah, this is a super sloppy outline, but this is a 44-minute talk I did today. All I did was write some notes. And in the notes, it was like playing to win, playing not to lose, and they're so subtle, they're difficult to detect. Conditions and unwritten rules create separation. Where are you in pain, and what is pain, and how does it create proximity? Where's it a gift, and where does it sharpen us? When do we ask for support? When don't we ask for support? When is it time for our internal work? What is intuition? And what is it to be alpha? What is it to be beta? And that was a 44-minute talk. Now that's a little sloppy, but I've been thinking about it, so I didn't write a lot of it. A lot of times I'll write a topic. I'll be like, hey, nothing's business, everything's personal. Like that's a topic I'm writing about. Then I'll just think about what are all the subjects that go to that topic? What are all the subpoints? And then what are the explainers to those subpoints? And how would I organize that? And what are the stories that go along with that? And are there statistics that go along with that? Like, I just have a format. And I learned this from my literary agent. He said, look, there's a 20-minute outlining process, 1 minute for your headline of any content you're creating, 3 minutes for the main body of the content, 7 minutes for all the descriptions and additional content that describes those subjects, and 7 more minutes to organize everything and reorganize it, so now you have an outline. That outline can become the beginning of a video course, it could be the beginning of a newsletter, it could be the beginning of a blog, it could be the beginning of an interview, it could be the beginning of a book. Like, I use that format all the time. It could be writing a 2-day workshop. It could be like, I use outlines and then I can fill in the blanks of the outline. Most people struggle with a blank piece of paper, but if you use that 20-minute process, now you've got something. And I still think it's easy for you to go, what are people asking me all the time? Once they get educated, what do they start asking that they didn't even know how to ask? And what are the key steps that they have to take to secure a new level of prosperity? That's your framework. So if you can think in frameworks, frameworks could be Venn diagrams, they could be alliteration like the 5 Ps, the 3 Cs. Like, you start thinking in ways that make it memorable and sticky so that that person can reference it. And also, it's like, I think of that as like a jazz musician. Once you know some of your riffs, your frameworks, you can access those and pull them up anytime. Someone could put me on stage right now and say, you've got 2 hours, go. Boom, I can just pull those frameworks. 5 levers to economic independence, the 4 C's to cash, right? The 3 ways to live within your means, the 3-part framework to saving tax. Like, I've just got all these frameworks, and then people say, man, you're really clear and articulate, because I have frameworks. And those frameworks continue to get refined and improved, but I begin a framework with an outline. And in that outline, I go, is this something I can use alliteration? Is this something that I can have happen in 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, or 7 steps? I cut things off at 7 steps. Before we had phones, why did we always have 7 numbers? Because I can remember my home phone number. But as soon as it's like, sometimes when I get those like codes that I have to enter, I'm like, dude, I have to go back 3 or 4 times. Like, I'm calling out one of the conference lines, and it's like, the code is 117-654-323. I'm like, what is it again? But if it's 7 numbers, if it's 7, that's almost like sacred. If you get up into 9 or 8 or 10, like, yeah, there's like top 10 lists. Just know that's fine. They're not going to remember all 10. That's not a framework. That's a list. You know, like Dave Letterman's top 10 or the not top 10 on ESPN, right? There's all those kind of things. That's fine. But remember, we're just watching for laughter. And people would never be able to say the top 10. They're going to remember the top 3. But that's not the intent of it. The intent was we're going to give you more because not every one of these is funny. But if we're trying to help people with their wealth and we're trying to help them, then we want smaller, shorter frameworks that is a lot easier for them to remember. I look at everything when it comes to engagement with people as like a thermometer or scale of 0 to 10. 0 is they have no clue who I am, right? Now there's certain things I can do where I'm going to start out at a 5, 6, 7, or 8. And that is if I'm introduced at an event that I'm speaking at. Now, am I introduced by someone who genuinely knows me and has a personal story? I let them introduce. Do they not have a personal story? I let a video introduce. I just did a video when I was introduced to 2,000 people. The video was a little bit like, I have to live up to that video because it was pretty awesome. But I just went out and joked about it. I was like, hey, usually I like people to say, nah, next guy's okay. And then I can always outdo it. But I was just joking, right? So I just acknowledge that. But if I'm introduced by everybody respects the person like it's the event that they host and have a personal story, I'm jumping up to an 8 by most people because they're like, so-and-so trusts him. I now trust him. Now I'm on stage. That's my domain. I'm going to leave that stage getting people above 5, everybody in the room, or repelled because they don't like me. And that's fine. Some people might be like, hey, he swore. I don't like that. Hey, why does this money guy have long hair? Like, I can't control all those things, and I don't want to. Because when people used to say, don't have a beard, keep your hair tight, wear a suit, that's not who I am. Like, I don't dress that way. Like, I've been at events where I walk out in pajama looking things. They're my little Australia looking long shirt, drop pant. Like, that's what I felt like wearing that day. I'm not there to get everybody. I'm there to be myself, and those people that want to align with me, that's fine. Now, if I'm not in person, it might take more steps. So I'm still going to say if I was a co-author of a book for someone that they know and love, I'm now the co-author, I'm jumping up pretty quickly. If it just speaks to something that they're dealing with and they didn't understand and they got massive value, I'm going to jump up. So it just depends. Going to 0 to 10, when you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then it's just little things like little notes. And yeah, there's certain brand advertising where we're seeing like Tide or Coke, where you might have to see a certain number of impressions if you've never had it before to have it kind of into your mind. But if you're doing content marketing, that content, when it's valuable, might be easier to skip up and go from 2 to 5 pretty quickly. Now, there's a concept that one of my mentors, Roy Williams, taught me. Roy wrote the Wizard of Ads trilogy. He's the founder of the Wizard Academy. He's one of the most prolific marketing minds on the planet. Wrote some of the most well-converting radio ads of all time for Rolex and 1-800-GOT-JUNKED, and just to name a few. Consulted with Lululemon back in the day. Like, this guy absolutely has been instrumental in helping people understand how to like move that scale faster and more impactfully. And so, how do you go from 0 to 10 is high impact, low cost. So how do you go high impact, low cost? Because that it grabs someone's attention. Congruent with who you are, right? So high impact, low cost. We're getting them as close to a 10 before they get handed to a sales opportunity on the marketing side. So how do you add that value to them? And how do you consistently add value? Most people, they don't have enough product to do that or enough positioning to do that. That's why if we just compare like radio to podcasts, radio spots a lot of times are 4 minutes. Podcasts might be an hour or even 2 hours long. Even the shorter ones are 20 or 30 minutes. And it's the host that someone's been tuning into for a regular period of time. Podcasts are really going to outperform some of those older medias. Roy taught me the 12 steps of intimacy. Now, the 12 steps of intimacy has to do with relationships and a sexual partner. That's the original, eye to eye contact, eye to shoulder, hand to shoulder, like it's these 12 steps, and intercourse being the 12th step. And what they found was if people went 1, 2, 3, they went through each step before intercourse, they were more deeply bonded. More oxytocin is released in the body. There's all this bonding hormone that happens. And so he related that to what are the 12 steps to intimacy in your program, right? Before they buy something from you, which is that final step. And so thinking through your business that way, and then your IP DNA and the ways that you like to create, and then using something like Joey Coleman's book of Never Lose a Customer Again, starts to look at how you can communicate with your customers on their journey. Because what I used to do is give too much up front and then not enough along the way. So they're overwhelmed. You know, we do these immersions. And for a while there, we had this application that was 5 sections. A finance section, a sole purpose section, a mental and mindset section, a physical and health section, and a social and rejuvenation section. And people got intimidated. It was really deep questions. We just sent it to them. They had to fill it out. Half the people that committed opted out because they started to investigate things in their life that would have been helpful to have a human being support them through. So we realized we went from step 0 to like, oh, you're interested? Here's step 10, you know, and they're like, whoa, 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 maybe coffee first, right? We went too fast, too far. And so you start to learn, hey, maybe not communicating everything up front in onboarding, but starting to spread it out. A little message in an email, a short video. Content marketing doesn't have to be this book that is the ultimate book that you're giving everyone. It could be a quick report, a small paragraph, a short video. And this is why most people get intimidated. You're comparing yourself to whoever's the greatest content creator that you've ever enjoyed in the space or that you've ever benefited from. And then all of a sudden we get in this like gap, you know, of like, oh, we're not there. And my compliance won't let me get there. And I barely have time because I'm meeting one-on-one. And then you're comparing yourself to someone who probably doesn't even meet with clients and saying, well, if it's not that, it's nothing. But progress over perfection, done is better than perfect. Where can you start? Small snippets, little pieces, frequently asked questions, the things that once they start learning that they will want to ask, things that give you credibility and authority that gets sprinkled over time. And maybe they watch some of it, maybe they watch all of it, maybe they don't watch any of it. And what you find is, what are their habits and what do they like? You know, my secret sauce is being introduced by someone who already has a relationship with the person. I was like that in college. If I want to meet a girl, I didn't just walk up. I wasn't the guy that just walked up to a girl and, hey, how you doing? I found someone that knew me, that knew them, and made the introduction. So it was almost like, this is Garrett. He's not a creep. You should talk to him, right? Like that's what I needed, like something like that. And that's the kind of stuff that a book can do, or a video course can do, or, you know, a report can do, or an interview can do. You've just got to get good at one of these for the next year. One item for the next year. That's it. Just one that gives you some one-to-many credibility and leverage instead of trying to do all this, you know, all up front, all done perfectly, all done at once. Like, go back to when you started your career. What did you get really good at first? This is just a part of your career where you take one of the things you're already really good at, but make it one-to-many instead of one-to-one. That's it. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from. So go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.